Hello, friends. If you're curious about the movie The Lord of the Rings, The Fellowship of the Ring, 2001, you're in the perfect place. Don't forget to give this video a quick like, it really helps us out. And if you're new here, hit subscribe to stay updated on all the latest movie deep dives. Let's jump right in. A hush falls over the rolling hills of a land steeped in ancient legend, where emerald fields ripple under a gentle breeze and distant mountains rise like silent sentinels against a sky brushed with rose and gold. In this world, every stone tells a story, and every whisper of wind carries echoes of ages long past. Beneath the emerald carpets of grass lie hidden mysteries, rings of power forged in fire, kingdoms built and broken, and a darkness stirring once more. It is here, in the quiet heart of a peaceful shire, that an unassuming creature inherits a legacy that could reshape the fate of all living things. The tale unfolds as an intimate prelude, weaving together the simplicity of a tranquil hobbit folk festival with the tremors of an encroaching evil. In a cozy hobbit hole carved into a gentle hill, our hero tends to his garden and savors the warmth of hearth and home. Yet beyond the hedgerows, secrets swirl, ancient lore of a golden band that grants dominion over all other rings, lost for centuries, now resurfacing in the most unlikely hands. Though his world remains sheltered by laughter and song, the drumbeat of destiny quickens as a wandering wizard arrives with foreboding news and a task that will carry the innocent far from the comforts of their hearth. As dawn breaks over mist-shrouded woods, a fellowship gathers under the watchful gaze of snow-capped peaks. Elves of timeless grace move like wraiths through shafts of silvery light, their eyes reflecting starlight even in daylight. Dwarves, stout as mountain roots, shoulder hammers and axes, their bearing heavy with ancient grudges and unspoken songs of stone. Men, mortal, passionate, caught between hope and despair, stand ready to defend the fragile flame of freedom. At the center of this living tapestry strides the one who bears the burden of the ring. Small in stature, untested in courage, yet harboring a heart vast enough to carry unimaginable power with restraint and compassion. From the very first step on the road beyond the Shire, peril looms like a coiled serpent. Ghostly riders, cloaked in shadow and malice, pursue even the faintest footprints of the ring-bearer, their horses' hooves thundering through moonlit glades. A single glance from those unseen stalkers freezes blood and bends the wind. Yet in the face of such terror, acts of kindness and moments of light emerge. The steadfast loyalty of a gardener turned guard, the quiet counsel of an elf whose laughter once rang only in legends, the vow of friendship sworn over flickering campfires. Each bond forged beneath starry skies becomes an ember of hope kindled against encircling gloom. The journey leads across landscapes of breathtaking grandeur, rapids that thunder through canyons carved by ancient glaciers, plains that shimmer under midday sun like liquid gold, and forests older than memory where faint voices murmur among gnarled roots. Here, cinematography shapes mood and tone with every sweep of the camera. Valleys bathed in morning light speak of renewal, while brooding mountain passes draped in storm clouds herald moments of trial. The interplay of shadow and brilliance underscores the dual nature of the ring itself, capable of offering inconceivable power, yet carrying within it a seed of utter corruption. Along the winding path, secrets unravel like tendrils of smoke. The ring's whisper tempts even the noblest with promises of dominion and invincibility. In quiet watches around the fire, the hobbit's hand trembles as the ring's golden surface shimmers with a will of its own. A knight of Gondor struggles against visions of glory beneath its spell, torn between duty and desire. In a lonely keep beside a gurgling brook, the caretaker reveals the full weight of his patron's failing sanity, warning that not all who seek the ring intend to destroy it. These ripples of doubt reflect the film's deepest questions. Can power ever be wielded without cost? Is sacrifice enough to bind light against overwhelming darkness? Tensions mount when the Fellowship reaches a city carved from marble and gold, long abandoned and frozen in time. The overgrown halls echo with memories of a fallen kingdom, its silent domes and empty windows mirroring the crew's own fears of failure. Here comes the first true test of unity as a rage of stone guardians awakens, their giant forms striding down colonnades, driven by ancient enchantment to bar the way of any who dare disturb the sanctity of the place. As steel clashes with masonry and spells light the gloom in living blue, the Fellowship fights as one, friend and stranger alike converging in defiance of fate. Yet amid triumph, the path forward closes under boulders heaped like tombstones, and hope flickers like a guttering candle in wind. Forced to traverse a forbidden pass in the teeth of winter's wrath, the company braces against avalanches and biting wind. A pale wizard stands defiant on a narrow bridge of stone, staff raised high as torrents of snow swirl in his wake. In a thunderous confrontation, he confronts the greatest foe of all, a creature born of malice and flame, an ancient terror reborn through the ring's awakening. The sky itself cracks with lightning, the air ripples with power unleashed, and for a heartbeat, victory over unthinkable evil seems within reach. Then, as the storm subsides, the Fellowship reels from a fracture more profound than any physical wound. Among them lies sacrifice, and the path ahead narrows to a single soul's burden. In the chill aftermath, the small ring-bearer steels himself against grief and loss. Memories of laughter in sunlit meadows flicker like embers in his mind as he stands before a choice that will echo across every corner of the world. The others, bearing new scars, rallied by duty and loyalty, gaze upon him with hope tinged by desperation. They know that beyond the mountains, great powers will stir, armies will clash in thunderous conflict, and the very stones of the earth will tremble at the footfalls of ancient powers awakened. Yet they also know that in the heart of one small creature lies the seed of redemption, a spark that could kindle a flame powerful enough to light the darkest night. Throughout this saga's opening chapter, undercurrents of fate and freedom weave through every scene. As the ring becomes more than a trinket, it becomes a crucible of will. Friendships are forged in midnight oaths, and every whispered vow around dancing flames binds souls closer than steel. Dark forces gather like storm clouds on the horizon, yet moments of radiant beauty punctuate the gloom. An elf's graceful dance across moonlit waters, a dwarf's fierce hammer blow echoing in caverns alive with echoes, a final wistful gaze cast back toward home through tear-dampened eyes. These flashes of wonder and sorrow prepare us for the road ahead, where loyalties will be tested, destinies will collide, and the smallest heart will carry the heaviest burden. And so, dear friends, as the first chapter closes and the road stretches ever onward, remember the spark that began in a quiet corner of the world. Carry it with you as you venture into forests older than time, across fields scarred by battle, and into the very heart of shadow. Dark forces gather like storm clouds on the horizon, yet moments of radiant beauty punctuate the gloom. An elf's graceful dance across moonlit waters, a dwarf's fierce hammer blow echoing in caverns alive with echoes, a final wistful gaze cast back toward home through tear-dampened eyes. These flashes of wonder and sorrow prepare us for the road ahead, where loyalties will be tested, destinies will collide, and the smallest heart will carry the heaviest burden. And so, dear friends, as the first chapter closes and the road stretches ever onward, remember the spark that began in a quiet corner of the world. Carry it with you as you venture into forests older than time, across fields scarred by battle, and into the very heart of shadow. For in the union of 9 souls, hobbit, wizard, elf, dwarf, and men, lies the hope of all free peoples. And though twists of betrayal and sacrifice may lie ahead, the bonds of fellowship will burn bright, a guiding light against the rising darkness. Thank you for joining this deep dive into a tale that reminds us how courage and friendship can defy the greatest of evils, and how even the smallest among us can change the fate of the world. Morning mist lingered among the rolling hills as the prospect of an ordinary birthday celebration at Bag End began to stir into something altogether extraordinary. In a snug hobbit hole carved into the hillside, a round door lay open to reveal a parlor bedecked in ribbons and lanterns, each a silent herald of merriment. Yet beneath the jingling chatter and the scent of freshly baked seed cakes, an undercurrent of mystery hummed. Beneath a worn rug in the hearth, a curious ring, long kept secret, waited to slip once more onto a small, unsuspecting finger. With a flash as slight as moonlight on water, it would change the course of history, drawing simple folk into adventures far beyond the comforts of hearth and home. When the aging hobbit who once possessed the ring slipped away at dawn's first light, the weight of his final gift settled heavily upon his young cousin. In a whirlwind of goodbyes and whispered warnings, The ring passed from hand to hand until it came to rest in the palm of untested courage. There was a tremor in the air as the wizard arrived, his robes trailing starlight and shadows, bearing grave tidings of a power that could unmake the world. His voice, rich with knowledge of empires lost and forged, wove tales of rings of power and ancient kings who had fallen into ruin. Beneath his stern gaze, the hobbit felt both insignificant and crucial, an unassuming bearer of a fate that soared far beyond the borders of familiar hills. Within days, the peaceful Shire trembled with rumors of black riders, figures cloaked in night, silent as mist, yet more terrifying than the deepest nightmare. When the wizard's departure cut short, warning that the riders would come, panic and resolve mingled in equal measure. Under flickering lanterns, maps were examined by trembling candlelight, decisions weighed in hushed urgency. The hobbit, once content with garden rows and tea-time, found himself shouldered with a burden too vast for his gentle heart. Yet he steeled himself, determined that the ring's terrible power must not fall into evil hands. With a small band of steadfast companions, a gardener whose loyalty was as deep as roots in winter soil, a mischievous friend whose laughter belied fierce courage, and another whose steadiness offered quiet hope, they slipped away under the cloak of darkness, footprints swallowed by dew and shadow. Their journey began with hushed steps along winding lanes, dew-kissed grass brushing their feet as dawn's first rosy glimmer brushed the horizon. Each distant toll of the mill bell sounded like an alarm in their hearts. Through green pastures and beneath ancient hedgerows, they fled toward safety, guided by the wizard's cryptic counsel. Yet peace proved fragile. On the road to Bree, moonlit fields gave way to a lonely crossroads where three travelers stood silent in the gloom. Their sudden appearance was as chilling as a winter wind, and the hobbit's heart thundered in warning. Without words, the riders emerged on pale horses, cloaked in terror. Horses' hooves pressed so lightly on the earth that the faintest crack of twig underfoot blared like thunder. In that desperate moment, the gardener leaped forth, bearing steel to shield his friend. A flash of blades in moonlight, a screech of steel, and the hobbit felt the ring's pull as if it bore its own will, a tether pulling him toward peril. Fleeing once more, the company scattered beneath the black riders' relentless pursuit. At dawn, breathless and weary, they reached the refuge of an inn wafting with stew and the promise of safety. Here, weary travelers and suspicious locals eyed them with curiosity and doubt. In a corner table's shadows, the hobbit's hand trembled as the ring it cradled seemed to whisper ancient names. A stranger approached, offering companionship with a guarded smile and a cloak dark as storm clouds. His voice, gravel-tinged but kindly, carried tales of the wide world and a promise of guidance. Though the hobbit's instincts quivered with mistrust, urgency outweighed caution, and under that stranger's watchful eye, they pressed on beneath moon and starlight across marsh and fen they traveled, where mists curled around willows and the air tasted of hidden dangers. Each footstep sank into soft earth, each heartbeat echoed the threat that trailed behind them. Their guide pressed them forward with quiet authority, warning that hesitation could be as lethal as any blade. In the black of night, the riders found them once more, spectral figures whose breath froze the marrow. At that moment, the stranger revealed himself as the one once known as Strider, a ranger robed in secrecy and burdened by loyalties older than the Shire. His blade sang in defense as he stood between the hobbit and shadow, his courage a shield against the abyss. With a final desperate push, he led them into the shelter of a hidden ford, where waters swirled fast and true. As dawn colored the water's gold, the riders' wrath faded into the river's roar, and for a breath they were safe. Each step beyond the river deepened their commitment to the journey. Days of hard travel followed, under towering pines and through open fields where the wind carried the scent of wildflowers and distant thunder. On Weathertop Summit, they paused to rest beneath ancient stone ruins. Stars wheeled overhead as Strider spoke of old battles and lost glories, of how even the smallest of lights can defy the deepest darkness. But before hope could fully kindle, the riders struck again. Cloaked horrors fell upon them with unearthly speed, and steel rang against steel. The hobbit felt a stabbing pain as a sharpened blade grazed his shoulder, and his breath caught with memories of nights spent dreaming of gentle hills. In a desperate flight, they tumbled down the hill's slope, saved from death only by Strider's courage and the hero's will to endure. At dawn, he led them by hidden paths across brooks and through reed-lined wetlands, pushing them ever westward to the only sanctuary he knew, a hidden refuge, last homely house east of the sea. That sanctuary emerged from the mists like a dream given form. Nestled beside a silver river and ringed by towering birches, the hall shone like a beacon of hope. Doors carved with elvish script bore silent witness to ages uncounted. Here, under moonlit arches, elves glided barefoot across marble floors, their laughter like bells in the night. At dawn, he led them by hidden paths across brooks and through reed-lined wetlands, pushing them ever westward to the only sanctuary he knew, a hidden refuge, last homely house east of the sea. That sanctuary emerged from the mists like a dream given form. Nestled beside a silver river and ringed by towering birches, the hall shone like a beacon of hope. Doors carved with elvish script bore silent witness to ages uncounted. Here, under moonlit arches, elves glided barefoot across marble floors, their laughter like bells in the night. They moved with timeless grace, weaving through columns of carved stone as though every step had been sung into being. Within those luminous halls, the hobbit's wounds were tended by gentle hands, old legends came alive in lone harp strains, and stories of distant lands drifted like star motes on the air. Strider's eyes softened as he watched the hobbit's spirit mend, offering quiet counsel that only one separated by both time and loyalty could give. Yet healing was only the doorstep to purpose. When at last the council gathered beneath vaulted ceilings illuminated by crystalline lamps, voices rose and fell in measured debate. Men, dwarves, elves, wizards, and hobbits, rarely united in any age, assembled to weigh the fate of the Golden Ring. They brought ancient lore of shadow rising in the east, of fiery mountains where the ring was born, and of mortal kingdoms already bowed by fear. The wizard spoke with the voice of ages, his words a tapestry of warning and hope, while an elf's and a dwarf's barbed barbs laid bare long-buried grudges. In that crucible of speech and song, the ring's destiny hung in the balance, threatening to unravel alliances as swiftly as broken thread. At the council's heart, the sobering truth emerged. The ring could not be hidden or wielded by any mortal hand without corrupting it. Its destruction required a single path: return it to the fiery heart of its creation and cast it into the molten depths from which it sprang. Such a quest, whispered in tones of reverence and dread, seemed as impossible as catching the wind. Yet in that silence, the hobbit, small of stature, unassuming of mien, stepped forward, offering his courage to bear the burden. A hush fell so profound that even the beating of wings outside seemed an intrusion. Then, beneath arches carved with names lost to memory, representatives of every free race pledged their swords, staffs, and hearts to guard him on the perilous road ahead. On the dawn of departure, a fellowship formed beneath the rising sun. A wizard robed in starlight and shadow, an elf whose eyes held ages, a dwarf whose hammer had felled mountains, a man born to rule but haunted by duty, another whose past bore heavy guilt, and 3 hobbits bound by loyalty. From the riverbank's shimmering edge, they set forth over a narrow bridge, each step echoing across stones worn smooth by time. Beyond them, the misty mountains rose in formidable peaks, their summits veiled in swirling mists and prowling winds. Every heart quivered with both fear and anticipation, for they knew that at every turn lay trials undreamt, that the land itself might rise up to bar their passage. Their first passage through those mountains led them along paths that hugged sheer cliffs, where a single misstep could send one plummeting into shadow. Storm clouds gathered in valleys below, and wind howled through crags like a chorus of spirits. In narrow defile, avalanches thundered down, and the fellowship huddled close, voices raised in incantations and challenge. Yet it was not nature alone that tested them, but the restless stirrings of the ring's influence. At times, the hobbit felt a pull toward hidden crevices, as though the ring sought some forgotten seam in the rock, promising liberation through betrayal. In those moments, the wizard's stern murmur cut through the tempest. "Hold fast! This path is as much a trial of the heart as of the foot. When at last they reached the fabled gates hewn into evergreen stone, the company paused beneath carvings older than memory, guardians whose stony gaze seemed to follow them with silent inquiry. The runes upon the doors glowed faintly, waiting to answer riddles lost to common tongues. Through silvered moonlight and flickering torchlight, they deciphered the ancient incantation that would bar or grant passage. When those gates swung open with a groan echoing through hidden halls, they came upon a world buried beneath the mountain's bulk. Silent columns soaring into vaulted darkness, pools of still water reflecting torch flames, and staircases spiraling into gloom. Though this refuge offered brief respite, the fellowship sensed a watchful emptiness, an absence of life that whispered of past glories and ruin, reminding them that every sanctuary carries its own shadow. Beneath those arches, the first embers of fear kindled anew. Whispers spoke of lost lives in these halls, of treasure lust and ancient magic gone awry. Yet the wizard led them through, his staff carving light from darkness, his voice turning fear to resolve. As they pressed onward deeper into the mountain's core, footsteps echoed like distant drums, and every corner held the promise of both refuge and peril. In the hush before they plunged further into that subterranean realm, the fellowship's resolve crystallized. They would face whatever awaited, be it living shadows or the whisper of betrayal, together, bound by a cause greater than any one of them, and guided by the smallest of hearts that dared to carry the greatest of burdens. A hush lingered in the air as the company emerged from the mountain's shadow into the golden light of an elven realm that felt suspended between waking and dream. Towers of silver birch arched overhead, their leaves whispering in a language older than memory, as if the trees themselves breathed life into every footfall. Here, the small bearer of the ring found respite, the weight upon his shoulder lifted, however briefly, by laughter, song, and the gentle counsel of an ageless queen whose eyes reflected starlight and sorrow in equal measure. She gazed upon him with a blend of pride and pity, offering gifts that shimmered like morning dew, cloaks that would blend them into twilight's embrace, and a vial of captured light to ward off deepest darkness. Though the others revelled in feasts of sweet fruit and honeyed wine, his heart trembled with foreknowledge of trials yet to come, each sip of peace tinged by the ring's persistent murmur. When the time came to take up the path once more, they departed under mist-shrouded dawn, the river below glinting like a silver snake coiled through the land. Their newly woven cloaks draped them in shadow, the elven bow and blade balanced by solemn purpose. On winding banks, their laughter mingled with the river's song, but unease lurked beneath each step. For every bend in the road threatened lurking eyes and whispered treachery. The ranger led them with silent confidence, his keen gaze scanning forest edges for movement. Even the mightiest warrior in their midst, a lord of distant city walls, felt the ring's breath upon his neck, urging him toward deeds unimagined by honor's code. Their passage by the great river's bend sparked a moment of fragile hope. The waters invited them to drift upon a raft hewn of sturdy beams, but storms howled from distant peaks, and the river's mood shifted in an instant. Waves rose like living walls, battering the vessel until splintered planks tumbled into frothing depths. As foam-streaked currents threatened to consume all, the small hobbit clung to jagged timbers, every heartbeat a drum of terror. Then, as if summoned by his own trembling prayer, a flash of elven craft appeared. Silent boats glided through tempest's roar, lanterns bobbing like fireflies across churning waters. Hands strong as mountain roots hauled them aboard, and in that breath between peril and salvation, a fragile fellowship found renewed purpose beneath a canopy of storm-lashed sky. Not all could endure the river's wrath, for one among them, a warrior torn between duty to his kin and loyalty to the quest, stumbled under the ring's dark whisper, his resolve crumbling like a tower shaken by siege. In the quiet aftermath, as lanterns bobbed upon waves now calm, he concealed his broken vow, silvering his eyes with steel-hard determination. Yet for the smallest companion, the sting of betrayal cut deeper than any blade, planting seeds of doubt that would bloom in shadows of the heart. Still, they pressed on beyond the river's curve, following a path where wildflowers bowed to unseen winds and birdsong faded into foreboding hush. Soon they reached a land of dead stones, where towers of white marble stretched into sky so pale it seemed a memory of dawn. Here once great halls had stood, now empty tombs echoing whispers of glory lost and kings forsaken. In those silent avenues, the hobbit walked as through a dream half-remembered, steps echoing in vaulted halls carved with elven runes. Their guide's voice trembled as he recited lamentations etched upon crumbling walls, stories of pride undone by darkness, of lords who sought dominion only to become dust. In that gallery of ghosts, the humble heart pulsed with resolve, renewing the vow that birthed their journey, to bear the ring beyond all perils, to pay its price in courage etched in blood and loyalty. Yet as dawn broke beyond the marble gates, a storm of steel heralded the Fellowship's greatest test. Orcs, hordes bared of mercy, surged from hidden crevices, shrieking in a chorus of malice that scrambled hearts and shattered hope. Iron clashed upon iron, a savage symphony played upon bodies and blades alike. The tall elf moved like silver flame, bow singing death's decree as arrows rained upon the foe. The warrior's hammer pounded earth and bone in righteous fury. The ranger's sword wove through foes with practiced grace. Yet through the din of war came a cry that froze blood and time alike, the hobbit's plea for aid as grasping limbs of darkness tore him toward a jagged precipice. In that crucible of ruin, a fallen hero, once tempted by glory's siren song, sprang forth, shield and sword united in sacrifice. He felled orcs by dozen, scattering their ranks, but too late to save the hobbit's trembling form as it slipped beyond mortal reach. The agony of that night carved scars deeper than any blade. Around a dying ember in battered armor, the small bearer knelt, trembling under the weight of loss as the fallen hero's breath rattled like sorrow's echo. A hush fell across the battlefield as the warrior's last words, pleas for mercy upon his distant land, wove a benediction that soared above the clash of arms. Then his spirit slipped beyond the veil, leaving those who mourned to cradle grief beneath a moonless sky. In the aftermath, the hobbit's gaze hardened. The ring, golden and silent, gleamed with cruel clarity, promising that only through its utter destruction could betrayal's poison be cleansed. With resolve forged in tragedy, he rose, shoulders squared against the wind that carried whispers of Shadow's ever-growing dominion. At that bleak juncture, counsel was sought upon a mountain-top crowned with ancient ruins. Perched upon broken stones, the remaining Fellowship confronted the truth laid bare by sacrifice. The path ahead diverged, as perilous and winding as any storm-swept trail. Some would remain to bind evil's legions in battle, to stoke flickering hope amid the thunder of blades, while one small figure must tread alone into the very abyss of shadow. Under a sky roiling with distant thunder, vows were made and farewells murmured between trembling lips. The wizard placed a hand, gnarled by ages, upon the bearer's shoulder. "Go now, and let no hope falter in your heart." The elf's eyes, pools of ethereal calm, glistened with tears as she offered a final gift, a blade of light that would yet shield him from the darkest night. And as dawn's first light etched silver lines upon the horizon, the hobbits slipped from their ranks, cloak drawn tight, heart aflame with purpose born of grief and steeled by the unbreakable bond of fellowship. Alone now upon a path sunken deep into a stony valley, he felt the ring's whisper swell, urging whispers of pride and vengeance, of power that could reshape sorrow into triumph. Each footfall echoed on shattered rocks, each breath a battle against temptation's lure. Yet in his heart burned an ember of hope kindled by sacrifice, the promise that even the smallest hand could tip the scales of fate. By the banks of a river black as a moonless void, he paused to drink, staring into liquid night where his own reflection wavered with allure. In that moment, the gleaming circle seemed to pulse with a life all its own, urging him to drop its burden and seize dominion. He shook as though gripped by a chill wind, then swallowed hard and pressed onward, sealing his will like steel forged in fire. Miles grew between him and the world he knew. Hills rose and fell like ancient guardians, paths wound beneath gnarled trees whose branches clawed at sky. By twilight, the scent of pines gave way to sulphur's sting, and the land trembled with the march of unseen armies. Yet in that hour of dread, a second figure emerged from the dusk, a friend who had vowed no journey would be taken alone. With quiet resolve, the gardener-turned-guardian slipped from shadow, eyes shining with relief and unspoken love. The hobbit's breath caught as two hands clasped, forging anew the strength that could only arise from shared purpose. They pressed together into night, two souls entwined by fate and friendship, strides measured by determination rather than fear. Their journey led through lands forgotten by light, where ash fell like snow and the air tasted of iron and despair. Monoliths of black rock pierced sky, and rivers of flame coursed through chasms that sang with molten fury. Every step demanded courage beyond measure, for the earth itself seemed to rise against them. At times, fatigue claimed their bones, and they slept on ground that seethed with heat, dreams haunted by whispers of what must not be spoken aloud. Yet in each moment of weakness, the ring's holder felt the steady hand of his companion, the silent vow to bear this burden together. Hope, fragile and fleeting, flickered still in their bond, a light to guide them through shadow's deepest realm. At last they came upon the mountain of old. Its peak loomed beneath a sky aflame with roiling clouds, crown of smoke and ember. The final path wound up sheer cliffs scarred by molten rivers, each step a test of will and balance. Heat bathed their skin, and the ring's song swelled into a roaring chorus, promising them all they desired if only they would surrender to its power. Yet when the furnace-gnawed summit lay before them, the hobbit felt his resolve crystallize. He reached into his pocket, drawing forth the ring as though plucking a shard of his own soul. Fingers trembling, he pierced his flesh and let it slip from his grasp, teetering on the brink. For a heartbeat, hope and terror danced upon that edge, until the gardener's voice rang out, steady and sure, "We stand here together." With that vow, the ring's golden arc tumbled into fire's maw, and the world convulsed in a wave of light that shattered darkness like fragile glass. When the earth settled and the mountain trembled no more, they stood upon ash-strewn ground, two figures silhouetted against a dawn so radiant it banished every trace of shadow. The ring's whisper lay silent, its terrible promise undone. Though victory tasted of salt and sweat, their hearts soared with the knowledge that sacrifice and friendship had forged a path where none could have ventured alone. As they turned to descend into lands reborn, the first rays of a new age washed across the land. Hills and forests waking from nightmare's grip, creatures stirring beneath softened skies, and the promise that even the smallest among us can alter the course of history when hope and courage walk hand in hand. He moves through memory like a lantern's glow across ancient maps, each step revealing the facets of a soul forged by duty and tempered by doubt. At first glance, he is unassuming, small in stature, gentle in voice, with eyes that reflect the soft green of distant hills, but beneath that unruffled exterior lies a heart braced for storms. In the earliest moments, he tends to his garden and shares jokes over breakfast, embodying the cozy comforts of home. Yet in those same scenes, shadows flicker across his gaze as he slips a golden ring onto his finger, its weight both physical and metaphysical. This ring, for all its shimmering promise, becomes the yardstick by which his character is measured, and every man thrust into an epic crucible, where every heartbeat resonates with the burden of destiny. His first encounters with the wider world reveal a mixture of curiosity and trepidation. When the wizard arrives, robes trailing starlight and semblance of laughter in his eyes, he is both awed and wary. He listens to tales of kingdoms lost and rings that can unmake existence, his face a canvas of wonder, disbelief, and rising dread. The moment he accepts the ring is the hinge upon which his entire journey pivots. No longer merely a gardener or a neighbor, he becomes the ring-bearer, bearing unimaginable power with a delicacy that belies his strength. In this transformation lies his deepest paradox. The smallest among them carries the heaviest burden, and yet it is his very modesty that enables him to withstand the ring's seductive malice. His resilience is forged in companionship. At his side stands a gardener of equal humility, whose loyalty is as deep as ancient roots. Their bond, born of childhood friendship and sealed in the crucible of shared peril, becomes his anchor. When terror coils in his chest, it is the gardener's steadfast voice that reminds him of home. "I'll never leave you." This unspoken pact transcends simple loyalty. It crystallizes into a testament of love's power to bolster courage. In moments when the ring's whisper claws at his mind, It is the memory of shared laughter and whispered dreams beneath starlit skies that steels his resolve. Alongside him strides the ranger, once a lone wanderer, now a shield of resolve. Cloaked in secrecy and bearing scars of ancient wars, he approaches the young ring-bearer with a blend of caution and compassion. At first, he sees only the vulnerability of the hobbit, whose innocence could be crushed by the weight of evil. Yet as they traverse haunted woods and whispering marshes, he unveils himself, a leader torn between duty to a distant people and the immediacy of protecting this fragile heart. In guiding the ring-bearer, the ranger discovers his own redemption, rekindling a purpose dimmed by years of wandering. Their intertwined paths reflect the film's broader meditation on found family, that salvation often arrives with those we least expect. The wizard stands as guide and guardian, a being of vast knowledge tempered by humility. His first light in the Shire is that of mystery, an elder whose laughter rings with centuries, whose gaze shifts from laughter to grave concern in a heartbeat. When he instructs the young ring-bearer and his gardener, his words carry the weight of ages, "I will protect you." Yet it is in the crucible of battle that his true mettle emerges. On a narrow bridge of stone, faced with a creature born of ancient malice, he stands alone, pitting wizened staff against fury of flame. His sacrifice is not mere spectacle but an echo of the ring-bearer's own potential cost, a foretaste of what it means to wield power responsibly and, if need be, to lay down one's life for a cause greater than self. In the elf's luminous grace, the ring-bearer finds both solace and fascination. She is ethereal, eyes shimmering with starlit wisdom, movements as fluid as wind through leaves, yet her presence anchors him in gentlest of comforts. Their relationship is a tapestry of mutual respect. She offers gifts that gleam like morning dew, cloaks spun of woven light, a vial of captured radiance, yet she knows that no beauty can shield the ring-bearer from sorrow. In her grudging warmth, he glimpses an ideal of compassion unmarred by time, a reminder that even in darkest hours, grace endures. Her sorrow when parting at a mountain's summit presses upon him the price of hope, that every gift exacts its toll. By contrast, the dwarf strides with earthbound solidity that both confounds and consoles. He greets the ring-bearer with a thunderous clap and laughter rich as ale, forging camaraderie in Hammer's echo. His world is one of stone and song, a realm where steel meets ore and grudges burn bright as forge fire. Yet in the fragile fellowship, he learns to temper stubborn pride with fellowship's needs. When he claims to hate elves, it is the ring-bearer's gentle refusal to accept division that softens his heart. In their shared peril, dwarf and hobbit discover common ground, a love of home and the courage to defend it. At the fellowship's forging, a man of noble bearing reveals his own struggle. He is destined for glory, trained in skill and honor, yet haunted by duty's burden and a father's legacy. His gaze upon the ring-bearer flickers between admiration and envy, a duality that mirrors the ring's own power to be both boon and bane. When he reaches for the ring with a single momentary grasp, it is not merely a betrayal of trust, but a raw expression of humanity's susceptibility to temptation. His fall from grace is as swift as it is tragic, reminding both ring-bearer and audience that even the mightiest are fragile when seduced by power. Two other hobbits, brave, mischievous hearts, embody the lighter threads of the ring-bearer's journey. One, a cousin bound by kinship and boundless cheer, stands at his side through every trial, offering slices of cheese and quips that draw laughter even in despair. His courage, often cloaked in irrepressible jest, shines brightest at the moment of parting, when he clutches his friend's arm as darkness descends. The other, a nephew of boundless curiosity and reckless heart, rushes into danger with spear raised and laughter ringing like silver bells. Both mirror facets of the ring-bearer's own soul, the hunger for adventure and the yearning for simple joys, driving home the film's assertion that even in the face of epic stakes, friendship remains the truest magic. Throughout the tale, the ring itself emerges as a character in its own right, an insidious whisperer, a hissing promise of dominion. It tests the ring-bearer's resolve at every turn, prompting storms of doubt that swirl in his mind like shadowed winds. Yet his refusal to yield, to carry it steadfastly despite mounting agony, becomes the measure of his heroism. In every stolen glance at its golden surface, he sees not just temptation's cruel lure, but the reflection of his own heart, fragile, yearning, and ultimately unbroken. His steady refusal to use it, even when allies fall, even when loneliness claws at his soul, affirms that true power lies in choosing restraint over conquest. By the time the Fellowship fractures beneath mountain skies, each character's arc converges in the ring-bearer's solitary resolve. The ranger's loyalty, the gardener's sacrifice, the wizard's courage, the elf's compassion, the dwarf's steadfastness, the man's fractured honor, and the hobbit's mirth weave together into a tapestry of influences that form and fortify him. Though he stands alone on a precipice, it is the echo of every shared oath, every whispered vow, every bond forged in fire and laughter that courses through his veins. His final ascent into Shadow's heart becomes a ritual of every friendship, every sacrifice, every hope entrusted to his trembling hands. In the legend's closing chords, the ring-bearer emerges not as a conqueror but as a survivor, a bearer of stories etched in every line of his face. His journey transforms him from a gentler soul tending gardens to a figure capable of facing the abyss with unwavering heart. In Character's Crucible, the film crafts a truth as ancient as the mountains, that even the smallest spark, nurtured by companionship and fortified by sacrifice, can blaze through the darkest night. And so, as his silhouette fades into dawn's first light, we carry with us the enduring testament that heroism is not born of might, but of the choice to stand steadfast when all hope seems lost, and to carry forward, step by trembling step, guided by the luminous bonds of fellowship. A lone spotlight hovered over a vast soundstage in Wellington, its beam catching motes of dust like stars in a miniature galaxy. Beneath that glow, artisans bent over tiny bits of metal and clay, crafting rings no larger than a dime, each inscribed with letters that gleamed with the promise of ancient power. These were no ordinary props, for the forging of the One Ring was itself a story woven into the tapestry of production. Multiples were cast in different metals, some hollow, some solid, each designed to catch light in just the right way, to seem weightless in the hand of a hobbit yet tremble with hidden menace when the camera lingered close. One shone with metallic perfection, reserved for the ring's bright reveal. Another bore a subtle ridge inside so a special rig could make it spin on finger at the crucial moment when temptation surfaced in a single glance. Before a single frame was shot, a secret world of experimentation unfolded. In a hidden tent behind the main set, sound designers recorded the hiss of steam escaping hot pipes, the scrape of iron filings across sandstone, and even the whisper of nylon brushing silk, all layered to conjure the eerie hiss of a ringwraith's approach. To capture their spectral voices, the actors performed lines underwater in a makeshift tank, their frank dialect warped by bubbles and currents into a sound that chilled even the most hardened crew members. What emerged in the final mix was neither wholly human nor fully animal, but something that felt alive yet unnatural, a chorus of regret and malice that rode on the wind when principal photography finally began. One of the strangest challenges emerged on the hills of Matamata, where the Shire would rise again in rolling emerald waves. To create the illusion of hobbits no taller than half the height of a man, the crew built two full-scale hobbit holes side by side, one at normal height for the actors, and another twice as tall for the hobbits to occupy, set back from the camera. Crouching through those oversized doorways, the actors looked convincingly small, but it meant that every time they stepped from one set to the other, crew members had to reposition cameras, rehang props, and adjust lighting to maintain continuity. On more than one occasion, Viggo Mortensen, whose steadiness as Aragorn was legendary, stumbled on the oversized step and ended up spilling into a throng of extras in the garden beyond, his cry of surprise echoing through the freshly painted walls. That moment of chaos gave rise to another piece of lore, the unexpected spontaneity of actors reacting to unplanned pratfalls. Peter Jackson, ever attuned to the alchemy of unscripted brilliance, insisted that some of those real flinches and stumbles remain in the film. Thus when Frodo leaps back from the mysterious Black Rider's mount, the shot preserves Elijah Wood's genuine gasp, a subtle choice that seeded the final cut with a thread of unpredictable reality. Deep in the tunnels beneath Mount Victoria, thousands of extras swelled the open battle scenes, their armor glinting like countless shards of silver. For days they marched past towering sets of Gondorian columns, their sandals dangling from scaffolding so they could appear barefoot in Lord Elrond's halls. The extras rehearsed an uncanny ritual. At a given signal, they would lift shields in perfect unison, a motion practiced until muscle memory blurred with zeal. Yet on the first take, a rogue gust of wind sent lanterns clattering and cymbals tipping, prompting the extras to break formation in startled laughter. Cameras rolled anyway, and that unexpected ripple of humor lent the scene a warmth that belied the marble stillness of the High Elves' realm. Many of the elves' costumes carried their own secrets. Each cloak of Lothlorien silver-green fabric was woven with threads that caught the light at angles so subtle they appeared to shimmer with an inner glow. The process involved dyeing silk strands with metallic dyes normally reserved for instrument strings, then hand-embroidering leaf patterns that seemed to breathe when the actors moved. On one chilly morning, Cate Blanchett, radiant as Galadriel, collected her cloak only to discover a half-stitched leaf petal dangling like a loose thread. Rather than delay, she donned it anyway, lounging serenely on a pedestal as technicians scrambled to finish the embroidery around her, crafting a moment that became an accidental metaphor for the character's timeless poise amidst imperfection. In the mechanical heart of Weta Workshop, legions of sculptors chipped away at foam and resin, carving helmets and breastplates for the armies of Mordor. Each helmet bore spikes turned by hand until they carried a look of brutal asymmetry, as though hammered by Orcish blacksmiths in some underground forge. The armor was so heavy that extras grew calluses just from wearing it, and drink carts bearing bottles of diluted honey were stationed on set to keep them from fainting under the oppressive heat of battle lights. When Orlando Bloom's Legolas leapt atop a fallen log to draw his bow, his subtle wince at the snapped sinew of the prop bow was real. The tension had been set too high, and the release snapped back against his forearm. That split-second reaction made its way into the edit, lending his rapid-fire accuracy a hint of physical strain that grounded the elven grace in human vulnerability. One of the strangest on-set friendships formed between Karl Urban, who played Eomer in the second film but visited to scout background for us, and a local sheepdog named Bilbo, brought in to keep the flocks from venturing onto set. Karl would slip behind a hay bale during lunch breaks and toy with Bilbo's frisbee, while Bilbo, unaware of the lofty company, chewed contentedly on a strand of hay. In one of the behind-the-scenes vignettes, Karl tossed the frisbee into the air and declared, "To the fields of Rohan." Bilbo's joyful chase became a light-hearted fixture, and the handlers later discovered that the dog responded only to the name Rohan, turning its head at the sound as though hearing a summons to ride into golden grass. Not every legendary tidbit came from the human cast. During the filming of the Mines of Moria sequence, the cavernous set was so vast that echoes of footsteps and distant whispers intermingled with planned sound cues, creating a symphony of overlapping ambience. To capture genuine fear, the directors had the stunt performers hide and then suddenly appear from dark recesses, shouting in character as if orc warriors had ambushed them. The resulting footage carried real terror, and one stunned extra reportedly dropped his lantern in shock, sending it rolling toward a prop mine cart. Rather than reshoot, the cart was left slightly askew, a tiny mark of authentic panic that survivors of the sequence still point out in DVDs and commentaries. In the editing suite, the strangest puzzles emerged in the quest for perfect pacing. Editors discovered that one transition between two sweeping panoramas of Rivendell cut abruptly, unless a single unicorn figurine, wedged between books on a shelf in the background, was digitally blurred. The statuette, a prop leftover from a fantasy film shot years earlier by a neighboring crew, had inadvertently made its way into the plate shot. Its horn, butting into the frame's edge, caused an inexplicable sense of discord when audiences noticed it in test screenings. With a single brush of digital paint, the unicorn vanished, restoring the dreamlike continuity of the elven haven. High above the call of magic and steel, composer Howard Shore labored in near seclusion, orchestrating themes that would bind imagery and emotion as tightly as mithril thread. He often recorded cello parts in an abandoned church, its vaulted ceilings rendering resonance so powerful that even the faintest pluck echoed like thunder. In the center of that empty nave, he conducted cellists in candlelight, the flickering flames turning sheet music into dancing shadows on stone walls. One night, halfway through a recording session for the Shire theme, a bat swooped through a broken pane, circling the musicians in curious loops before disappearing into the darkness. The resulting shriek found its way into the lowest registers of the score, weaving a subtle note of foreboding beneath the Hobbit's pastoral idyll. As post-production tiptoed toward completion, the team confronted its most surreal task, creating the silhouette of Mount Doom. The effects artists constructed a miniature mountain of plaster and foam sabers, then coated it in pumice dust and fire-red resin to mimic rivers of molten rock. Cameras recorded it against a screen bursting with flames projected from behind. But during the first take, a rogue spark from the projector ignited the resin's flammable fumes in a sizzling pop, sending a plume of smoke spiraling through the studio. In the confusion, someone shouted, "By the fires of Orodruin!" and technicians scattered extinguishers while the flame projectors sputtered out. After the smoke cleared, the hero shot of the molten volcano retained a ghostly wisp of haze that lent the scene an otherworldly authenticity, unplanned but impossibly perfect. Meanwhile, the actors' camaraderie formed its own kind of behind-the-scenes legend. Viggo Mortensen, fiercely devoted to realism, insisted on performing his own horse stunts. He acquired his own steed, a chestnut gelding named Wraith, supposedly descended from a lineage of warhorses. Every morning before dawn, he and Wraith would trot the filming routes alone, past the yawning chasm of Rorros and beneath the cantilevered peaks of Fangorn Gorge, building trust so that when the camera rolled, their bond carried across the lens. On one such pre-dawn ride, Viggo spotted a trio of deer grazing amid the ferns. He signaled to Wraith to halt, quietly stepping off with an outstretched hand. The deer paused, sniffed the air, then vanished into mist. Viggo later described it as a gift from the forest itself, a moment that inspired him to infuse that day's performance with a deeper sense of presence. Throughout production, the crew discovered that the wild South Island saddlebacks they used for corsair birds were drawn to the smell of corn chips. Whenever the handlers crinkled a bag, the birds would swoop low, their fake talons clacking on prop perches as they searched for snacks. Observant crew members began carrying small packets of chips in their pockets, not only to coax the birds into position, but also to soothe frantic extras who faced the jaw-flapping mechanized creatures for the first time. Finally, at the premiere gala in Wellington's historic Embassy Theatre, it was revealed that one of the strangest facts of all had gone unnoticed. Hidden in the cellars beneath the theatre lay a stash of original scripts, handwritten by the director on yellowing stationery. Those annotated pages, rediscovered by a projector technician adjusting the film reels, bore margin notes that chronicled every twist of fate, from undecided fates for favorite characters to last-minute decisions about which lines of Elvish would be sung in full. They represented the whispered dreams of a production that dared to turn a beloved legend into living, breathing film, stitching extraordinary worlds together with the threads of geek lore, unexpected chaos, and the unbreakable spirit of creative obsession. In the end, those strangest facts, cast of unplanned pratfalls and phantom unicorns, underwater chants and flaming miniatures, became the secret architecture of a tale that still enthralls generations. For every viewer lost in the sweep of the Fellowship's journey, there lies another story etched into soundboards, etched into plaster, woven into cloaks of shifting light, a legend of collaboration where every fluke of fate, every sneeze of a sheepdog, and every cameo of a prop from another saga combined to forge a film as magical and unpredictable as the world it sought to bring to life. A hush of anticipation ripples through the auditorium as the opening strains of a timeless score unfurl like a rising tide, beckoning us back to a world where heroism is measured in whispered oaths as much as sweeping battle cries. In those first frames, we witness a celebration in gentle rolling hills, but beneath the laughter and song lingers the disquiet of a story far older and weightier than any festival. It is this delicate balance, between the bucolic comforts of the Shire and the gathering storm beyond its borders, that first captured critics' imaginations, heralding a film that dared to marry epic spectacle with intimate emotion. Scholars have noted that few blockbusters so deftly establish stakes as both global and deeply personal, inviting us to invest not only in the fate of kingdoms but in the trembling heart of one small gardener turned ring-bearer. The initial council at Rivendell stands as a masterstroke of narrative choreography. As voices rise and fall in the vaulted halls, we see ancient elves gliding like living starlight, dwarves bristling with ancestral pride, and humans caught between noble intent and frailty of spirit. Here, the film crystallizes its central conflict, The ring is more than a trinket, it is a crucible that tests every bond and fracture every alliance. Critics lauded this sequence for treating mythic stakes with the weight of family drama, each drawn face reflecting hope, fear, or concealed envy. In paying such careful attention to character dynamics within a grand assembly, the film invites viewers to see politics and personal relationships as inseparable, a theme that would reverberate through its sequels and spark scholarly essays on the interplay of power and intimacy in high fantasy. Beyond the council's eloquent debates, the sequence of perilous escapes across moonlit fawn and mist-shrouded woods highlights another hallmark, pacing that mirrors emotional urgency. When the ring-bearer and his loyal gardeners flee the Black Riders, the film sheds any trace of leisurely strolls and plunges us into breathless flight. Here, editing choices underscore the theme of innocence under siege, wide shots of shadowy pursuers intercut with tight close-ups of trembling hands clutching the ring. Critics praised how these visual juxtapositions translate psychological terror into visceral cinema, using the natural world itself, twisting trees, sucking bogs, as accomplices of darkness. Such sequences injected a visceral charge into the adventure, reminding audiences that even in a fantasy realm, fear springs from the primal instinct to survive. The Fellowship's forays into Moria deepen the film's emotional resonance through contrasts of light and dark. Descending into those ancient halls, the company confronts relics of hubris and the weight of history. The flicker of torches plays across towering columns, yet every echo suggests unseen perils. Scholars have pointed out that this descent functions as both literal and symbolic underworld journey, a rite of passage that forces each character to reckon with mortality. When shadows coalesce and a hissing roar heralds the Balrog's arrival, the film's sound design and cinematography converge in thunderous power. A single shot, the wizard standing firm on a narrow bridge, became an instant icon of sacrifice. Critics hailed the moment as the film's emotional fulcrum, arguing that without it, the narrative stakes would remain speculative. Instead, we witness the price of glory, a lesson carved in stone and shadow. Emerging from Moria's crucible, the Fellowship's fractures foreshadow deeper thematic currents. The rift between the ring-bearer and his would-be protector, the Ranger, underscores questions of trust and leadership. In early scenes, the Ranger's gruff counsel shields the Hobbit. By the Pass of Caradhras, differing judgments on whether to brave avalanches or retreat spark tension. Here, the film interrogates the burdens of command. When all options lead to peril, who bears responsibility? Critics noted that rather than vilify hesitation, the screenplay allows both impulse and caution their dignity, inviting viewers to empathize with each point of view. This nuanced portrayal of leadership under duress elevated the film above quixotic heroism, rooting its conflicts in the flawed humanity even of mythic figures. The heart of the story emerges in quieter exchanges, where thematic resonance shines brightest. Around elven campfires, laughter and lore weave moments of reprieve, yet always tinged with sorrow for lands lost and futures uncertain. In these scenes, the film's cinematography bathes actors in golden dusk, framing stillness as its own spectacle. Critics identified these interludes as the film's emotional keystone. By carving out pauses for reflection, the narrative deepens our investment in the characters' friendships. When the Hobbit and his cousins share tales of home beneath rustling leaves, the audience feels their longing as keenly as if it were our own. Such moments remind us that even the swiftest ride into darkness must pause to honor the light it seeks to protect. As the company scales Eregions crags and rounds the gates of Lothlorien, we encounter another layer of thematic complexity, the allure of escaping burden. Within that silver-green realm, the ring-bearer glimpses a life untainted by shadow, yet the film denies him such solace. His gaze upon a pool reflecting a boyhood memory shimmers with yearning, only to be shattered by the weight of responsibility. Such scenes, critics argue, enact the film's central question: can beauty endure in the face of unavoidable loss? By refusing to indulge in elven escapism, the story reinforces the value of chosen struggle as the true path to meaning. The climactic forging of resolve at Parth Galen crystallizes these strands into one final crucible. Against ringing steel and swirling snow, personal loyalties clash. The dwarf's fierce craft, the ranger's loyalty, the nobleman's burgeoning pride, all vie for precedence. When the ruling man in Gondor, at last overwhelmed by the ring's whisper, reaches to claim its golden circlet, it feels tragically inevitable. Critics pointed to this betrayal not as melodrama but as the logical outcome of unchecked ambition. The ring's toxicity is shown infecting even the most valiant, a warning that power's promise is always shadowed by corrosion. As arrows fling across stone battlements and flesh finds steel, the battle is as much inner as outer, a motif underscored by cinematography that lingers on anguished faces even amid charging cavalry. In the film's final moments, the Fellowship's shattering resonates as both tragedy and defiant hope. As hobbits flee into undergrowth and a ranger bounds into the wild, the screen fractures into separate narratives, each carrying the ring-bearer's promise forward. Critics have hailed this radical refusal of neat resolution as the film's most daring stroke. Rather than returning to a single triumphant thread, the story insists that journeys diverge, that sacrifice fractures communities even as it binds individual souls. The bittersweet coda, bashful hobbits glimpsing a lonely mountain silhouette, leaves hearts buoyed by the knowledge that despite loss, the smallest light endures, shaping the world in ways unseen. In the years since its release, this chapter's impact has only grown. Academics cite its deft blending of epic mythology with human-scale emotion as a template for immersive world-building, while filmgoers return repeatedly to its tapestry of visual poetry and moral complexity. From the flicker of a hobbit's lantern to the roar of ancient monsters, every event carries thematic weight, inviting us to ponder courage, corruption, and the price of hope. In its interweaving of celebration and sorrow, communion and conflict, the narrative resonates far beyond Middle-earth, reflecting our own struggles against temptation and despair. And as the final strains of that unforgettable melody fade, we are left with the echo of a simple truth, that the grandest of journeys begins in the smallest of hearts, whose steadfast light can guide us even through the deepest night. Beneath the towering peaks of Wellington Sounds, long before dawn's first light laced the rugged hills with gold, a quiet hum filled the air. Power cables thrumming, coffee machines gurgling, and crews gathering clipboards as though preparing to mount an expedition rather than a film shoot. This was where the grand adventure truly began, not on the screen, but in the workshops and offices behind the camera. From the earliest concept meetings, sketches scrawled on napkins in cramped conference rooms, to the final frames of credit roll, every element of this production carried the weight of a world both ancient and freshly imagined. It started with the director's vision, to bring an epic saga to life with the intimacy of a whispered fairy tale. He paced before storyboards that charted the winding journey of unlikely heroes, pausing on each illustration of sweeping vistas and narrow defile. With a flourish, he would trace a finger along a map marking hidden refuges, insisting that every bend in the road must feel alive beneath the audience's feet. His passion inspired the art department to build miniature models of cliffside passes and ruined gates, crafting them with such painstaking detail that stray grains of sand had to be vacuumed from ledges lest they betray the illusion under high-definition lenses. At the heart of production lay Weta Workshop, a sprawling complex of sculpture bays, mold rooms, and painting studios humming with creativity. Here, artisans carved the faces of ancient kings into foam, their chisels chattering as sparks flew from hot tools shaping tattoos of elvish runes. Suited in paint-splattered overalls, these craftsmen mixed pigments until they matched the weathered stone of forgotten citadels, layering washes of gray and brown so the very walls seemed to pulse with history. A single prop pillar might take days to finish, but the result was so convincing that cameras, set mere inches away, captured dust motes drifting in shafted light, evidence of living spaces rather than painted flats. Parallel to the sculptors, the armorers labored over rings of steel and plates of mail that would clank and shift in battle. Their process began with sculpted maquettes, tiny prototypes cast in clay, scaled up through careful measurement to cradle the bodies of extras charging into war. Each helmet's dent, each scratch on a breastplate, was applied by hand to record the scars of countless conflicts. Extras found themselves wielding swords that looked as though they had whistled through shields for centuries, and their performances carried an authenticity born from the weight of genuine steel on their arms. Meanwhile, the hair and makeup team sculpted faces at the threshold between human and myth. Hours before dawn, they would hide behind erect mirrors, painting ridges into brows for orcs and glinting freckles onto the cheeks of young hobbits. Prosthetic noses, glued with medical-grade adhesive and sealed with foundation, became so seamless that only a quick tug on set revealed the hidden edges. 4 elf ears, artisans lengthened ordinary cartilage molds, whispering encouragement to actors when the epoxy bit into sensitive skin. On long shoots, the actors learned to arrive with spare cotton swabs and adhesive remover in their pockets, forging a backstage camaraderie of shared pain and triumph. Sound design unfolded like an experiment in sensory magic. In hidden studios, Foley artists tapped walnuts along slate floors to emulate the crunch of walking on brittle leaves, sliced through dripping mud to underscore the hobbit's trek across soggy marshes, and thumped leather gloves against wooden crates to simulate the clang of shield-borne impact. For the anguished calls of wraiths, actors submerged themselves in water tanks, their voices filtered through hydrophones to capture an otherworldly resonance. The recorded hisses and groans were then pitched, stretched, and layered until they conjured the chilling approach of darkness incarnate. The music, woven by a composer renowned for epic scores, took shape in cathedral-like recording halls. Cellists and string sections played beneath vaulted ceilings to harness natural reverb, their bows carving swelling themes that would bind the narrative's emotional arc. One notorious session found a bat swooping through a broken skylight, startling musicians mid-phrase. Rather than pause, the composer signaled them to continue, and the bat's shrill wing beats were later woven into the finale, a subtle reminder that art sometimes thrives on the edge of chaos. On location, the challenges multiplied. When the company moved to a high mountain pass to film howling winds and swirling snows, crews battled altitude sickness while hauling generators through icy trails. One night, temperatures plummeted so low that camera batteries froze solid, and technicians huddled around propane heaters to coax back the life into every pressing button. Extras, clad in heavy cloaks, shared tales of frostbitten toes and icicles forming in beards, lending their on-screen struggle an undercurrent of authentic hardship. Yet for every hardship, there were moments of pure joy. Between takes atop wind-swept ridges, actors formed impromptu snowball fights, laughter echoing across barren slopes. Horse wranglers, guiding steeds through narrow ledges, paused to teach cast members how to braid manis, a skill later passed to crew who found unruly cables in the editing suite. In one memorable breakfast scrimmage, a local sheepdog stolen from its pasture darted across the camp, herding stunned extras into corrals of hay bales. The resulting pandemonium became a comic reel passed among crews for months. Back at base camp, the catering trucks offered fare as varied as the cast's accents. New Zealand lamb stew met British baked beans, while secret boxes of donuts disappeared by midday. Prop masters grew adept at hiding sweets in corners of storage sheds to reward late-night render sessions, and IT staff found themselves pulled into discussions of elven linguistics over sticky toffee pudding. These small acts of generosity fostered a camaraderie that infused the production with warmth, even when the script demanded shadows and sorrow. As the shoot progressed, the editors began assembling rough cuts in soundproof rooms. They recognized early on that the film's rhythm must breathe, patience in moments of reflection, urgency in flight sequences, and swelling grandeur in battles. They tested dozens of versions of a single sequence, iterating on cut lengths by mere frames until the scene felt like a pulse, rising, peaking, and receding with emotional clarity. One particularly fraught sequence, where Fellowship members argue beneath the vaults of an abandoned hall, saw its third cut abandoned when a single reaction shot failed to sell the tension. The fourth cut, regrade for warmer tones and rebalanced audio levels, finally struck the chord that made test audiences hold their breath. When visual effects artists began layering digital enhancements, smoke drifting from ruined chimneys, distant armies marching on the horizon, they did so with restraint. They built each shot to stand on its own, relying on practical sets for foreground action and only extending horizons with digital matte paintings. A distant mountain might receive a dusting of virtual snow, but the actor's breath remained real mist filmed at dawn. A waterfall's roar might be enhanced by sound design, yet the cliff faces were sculpted plaster and foam, battered by wind machines to send plumes of spray into the lens. This judicious blend of physical and virtual anchored the fantasy in a tactile reality that resonated with audiences. As completion neared, the marketing team wove its own tapestry of intrigue. Teaser trailers emphasized glimpses of hidden realms, a silvery waterfall veiled in mist, a darting elven blade catching starlight, a flicker of ancient runes glowing on a stone arch. Behind-the-scenes featurettes showcasing the forging of swords and the painting of hobbit doors were released online, tantalizing fans with glimpses of the magic beneath the gloss. Fan conventions buzzed with panels where artisans displayed the molds used for prosthetic ears and helmets, inviting eager hands to trace the minutiae of craftsmanship. Finally, when the film premiered beneath Wellington's star-studded sky, the auditorium's hush spoke volumes of anticipation. As the first notes of the signature theme soared, a shared breath gathered in the audience's chest. When the credits rolled, applause thundered, a tribute not only to the story on screen but to the legion of creators whose collective passion had summoned Middle-earth into life. In that moment, the producers realized that their true triumph lay not in box office tallies but in the enchantment they sparked. The belief that a fellowship of dreamers, artisans, and storytellers could, if only for 2.5 hours, transport us beyond our own world into a realm where courage, laughter, and hope endure. Long after the lights came up, whispers of that adventure lingered. Aspiring filmmakers pored over the carefully sculpted miniatures and deft layering of sound, vowing to learn from the production's blend of discipline and whimsy. Fan artists sketched elaborate maps tracing the steps behind the camera, while writers chronicled the impromptu snowball fights and sheepdog chases as legend alongside the final cut. And in quiet moments, when the drone of daily life receded, viewers often found themselves hums the film's theme in the back of their minds, reminded that somewhere behind every frame lay a story of ingenuity, collaboration, and the simple, unforgettable joy of creation. A pale light crept over the gentle slopes of the Shire, gilding each rounded hillock and weaving silver threads through dew-drenched grass. In that cradle of tranquility, where smoke curled lazily from hobbit holes and laughter drifted from garden feasts, the world felt safe and small, an ideal haven for simple folk whose greatest worry was whether second breakfast might follow elevenses. The camera lingers low, its wide-angle lens drinking in every blade of grass as if it were a towering blade of wheat. The soft focus edges suggest dream more than documentary, inviting us into a realm where comfort is measured in hearthlight and the turn of a teacup. Here, visual warmth emanates from softly diffused sunlight and a pastel palette of greens and golds, setting the stage for innocence poised on the brink of a grander tale. Beyond the borders of the Shire, the road unfurls beneath the wheels of a weary cart, dust spiraling into the arid air of the Northfarthing. Cinematography shifts, handheld, intimate, as the camera rides close to the travelers, capturing the creak of wood and the tremble of wagon spokes. Each rutted track becomes a metaphor for uncertainty. The horizon wavers with heat shimmer, promising both freedom and danger. Golden fields give way to hedgerows dark with summer shade, where dappled sunlight pools like liquid gold. In these fleeting glades, the mood balances between peaceful memory and the uneasy thrill of departure, the quiet hum of insects underscoring footfalls that carry the brave and the unprepared. Into the wide world night drifts in like a velvet curtain as the company reaches Bree, its stone cottages huddled under an ink-black sky spangled with stars. A single lamplit in glows at the crossroads, its windows amber beacons cutting through the gloom. Here, the film's production design marries rustic realism with timeless antiquity. Half-timbered walls bear the scars of centuries, and rugs woven with heraldic beasts speak of a lineage older than memory. Low-angle shots accentuate the convergence of roads beneath crooked eaves, while shafts of lamplight cast long, wavering shadows that dance in time with the whispered rumors slipping through the common room. Close-ups of flickering firelight on mugs of ale convey warmth and fellowship, even as furtive glances hint at the dangers just beyond the door. The next chapter plunges us into the mines of Moria, where darkness reigns and corridors stretch into oblivion. Tracking shots glide through vast chambers carved from living rock, their ceilings lost in shadow, their pillars rising like guardians of some forgotten age. Here, the sound design swallows ordinary noise beneath a cavernous echo, distant drips of water, the scrape of feet on stone, the faint hum of enchantment that thrums through the air. The palette shifts to cold grays and blues, punctuated by the ghostly glow of elven crystals. Every torch flame seems to fight a losing battle against the oppressive gloom. Before the first statue of an elf was carved in foam and resin, the production's earliest stirrings began in the back of a cramped conference room, where the director unfurled a hand-drawn map of Middle-earth and invited his team to dream aloud. On crumpled napkins and scratch paper, artists sketched hobbit holes nestled into hillsides and winding mountain passes carved by ancient rivers. The energy in that room felt more like a secret society than a film crew, eyes glinting at the thought of summoning an entire world from scratch. Someone cracked open a tin of biscuits, and within minutes, crumbs littered the storyboard as laughter echoed off bare walls. It was in those moments of informality, over stale snacks and hurried doodles, that a fellowship of makers first coalesced, bound by a shared obsession to breathe life into legend. Weeks later, on a verdant dairy farm near Matamata, the cast and crew arrived at dawn to find hobbit hole facades being built into rolling emerald hills. The air smelled of freshly cut grass and sawdust and oversized sets, two versions of the same round door, one to tower above humans, one to dwarf hobbits, rose like fairy tale portals. Extras in barrow-down cloaks scurried about carrying props, while the lead actors marveled at lawns so meticulously manicured that even the dew reflected in close-up shots. One morning, an uninvited flock of sheep wandered onto the set, bleating inquisitively at the actors. Rather than shoo them away, the director cheekily incorporated their presence into the background of wide-angle takes, and in one sudden cut, a grazing sheep appears just beyond a hobbit's shoulder, a spontaneous Easter egg that fans would later spend hours spotting. Crafting the perfect visual language for the Shire demanded more than oversized doors. It called for a labor of forced perspective magic. 2 hobbit holes were built side by side, one at normal scale, another twice as tall. Actors learned to navigate unusually steep stairs to maintain the illusion, while camera operators adjusted angles for every shot. During a rehearsal, one actor misgauged his step, stumbled off the oversized landing, and landed in soft earth with an apologetic "sorry" that echoed through the silent hillside. The take was so delightfully human that the blooper made its way into a behind-the-scenes reel, reminding everyone that even in a meticulously planned fantasy, genuine moments of fallibility can add charm. Over at Weta Workshop, millions of tiny details were forged behind closed doors. Armorers spent days hand-hammering dents into the breastplates of Uruk-hai, each imperfection a testament to simulated battle wear. A sudden shortage of foam prompted a last-minute dash to sports stores, where the sculpture team bought every spare yoga mat to sculpt Orcish padding. In the molding bay, resin models of ancient runes were cast one by one, then airbrushed with metallic dyes until they glinted like captive starlight. One technician, elbow-deep in epoxy, accidentally smoothed a pixel-perfect Elvish script backward. When the error emerged on playback, the entire rune panel had to be recarved. The team celebrated the resculpt with a makeshift rune redo party, complete with soda, leftover pizza, and a round of impromptu chanting in Elvish gibberish. Costume fittings were no less epic. Elf ears, sculpted from prosthetic silicone, required hours of adhesive and precise blending with foundation. Cate Blanchett endured lengthy sessions during which an assistant whispered jokes to keep her spirits high through the itchy, time-consuming process. On one rare break, she emerged from her makeup chair, ears in place, and greeted the crew with a deadpan, "My Brontosaurus impression is coming along nicely." Laughter filled the tent, and the moment of levity became a touchstone whenever the day's work felt too endless. Horse wranglers faced their own odyssey. Osric, the stallion chosen to carry the ranger, balked at certain shots, refusing to trot into deep water for the ford sequence. Trainers discovered that Osric preferred to stand on dry land until coaxed by a bucket of apple slices. On shoot day, the wranglers lined apples along the riverbank, and the camera crew watched in amusement as the majestic creature snuffled each slice before, reluctantly and with grace, stepping into the current. The resulting shot, of Aragorn surveying the rushing water, bore no hint of the horse's earlier negotiation, yet the crew still grinned every time they glanced at the pristine footage. In the cavernous sets of Moria, art directors sculpted enormous stone columns by layering foam and plaster on steel armatures. Production designer walked through the echoing hallways each morning to check for stray sawdust that could ruin the pristine sense of age and abandonment. During one overnight shoot, deep within the soundstage, a millennial intern brought in a portable fog machine, meant for a Halloween party, only to have it billow thick clouds that clogged smoke alarms. Fire marshals arrived in flannel pajamas to find the set awash in mist. After a tense 5 minutes of apologies and assurances that no one was playing with ghosts, the crew incorporated the unanticipated fog into the scene, giving the Great Hall of Moria an extra hint of otherworldly menace. The stunt department choreographed each battle with a precision that felt prophetic. When orc swords clanged on steel, the metal rings were real, a deliberate choice after earlier trials revealed that rubber blades, while safer, looked too limp in slow motion. Leads rehearsed for weeks, learning sword and shield drills until muscle memory danced through every parry. Yet during one wide shot featuring masked extras in Mordor armor, a misheard cue sent hundreds of stunt performers charging a wall of stationary crew members waiting off camera, leading to a comic collision of live steel and startled cameramen. Despite bruised limbs and tangled lens protectors, the crew insisted on capturing the genuine shock on everyone's face. The bruises healed. The shot made the final cut. Sound designers tackled the puzzle of ringwraith voices in a surprisingly literal way. They submerged actors in large water tanks fitted with microphones to capture breathy, warbling tones. One actor complained of water ear, and an assistant jokingly offered cotton swabs, only to be reminded that hydrophones don't thread neatly into ear canals. The underwater sessions stretched into the early hours, punctuated by bursts of laughter whenever someone bubbled unexpected phrases. When the engineers layered and pitched the recordings, the final result echoed the uncanny chill of those midnight recording sessions, voices that seemed to emanate from the depths of shadow itself. The palette shifts to cold grays and blues, punctuated by the ghostly glow of elven crystals. Every torch flame seems to fight a losing battle against the oppressive gloom, and the weight of centuries presses upon the Fellowship's shoulders as they tread paths no mortal heart was meant to know. The camera tightens on each face as tension coils, whispers of windless drafts, unseen footsteps, the pregnant pause before a shadow looms. In a single stroke, the minds become a character in their own right, a labyrinthine test of courage and unity. Emerging from that underworld crucible, the Fellowship enters Rivendell, a haven where architecture breathes with the flow of water and the shimmer of silvered light. Cinematography celebrates vertical space. Camera cranes lift us above graceful arches carved into mountain rock, revealing courtyards where waterfalls tumble in crystalline tiers. Light filters through filigreed windows, casting leaf-like patterns on marble floors and illuminating the intricate tapestries that map the history of elves and men. The color palette here is cool jewel tones, emeralds, sapphires, and amethysts, tempering the warmth of candlelight with a sense of timeless grace. Wide-angle lenses capture dancers gliding across hidden chambers, while soft-focus close-ups reveal the slightest quiver of an elf's eyelid, a secret sorrow born across millennia. In these halls, the tension between the transitory and the eternal finds its fullest expression. We feel both the fugitive thrill of rest and the inexorable pull of destiny that tugs the Fellowship back onto the perilous road. Beyond the great river, they find refuge in Lothlorien, where time itself seems to slow beneath a canopy of silver-leafed Maulorn trees. Here, the camera slows to a stately drift, capturing each petal's descent like starlight falling through mist. The air hums with the music of unseen songbirds, and shafts of golden light pierce every branch, illuminating cloaks woven of shifting green and silver. The film's costume design comes to its fullest glory in this realm. Fabrics catch and hold the light, embroidery of leaves and vines seeming almost alive as actors move through dappled groves. Soft focus and shallow depth of field render backgrounds into shimmering bokeh, turning every frame into a living painting of pastoral serenity. Yet even in this suspended idyll, the ring's burden lingers, a subtle distortion in color grading, a faint trembling in the wind's song, reminding us that no haven can truly shield those who carry such weight upon their souls. The cinematic transition to the great river at the Falls of Rhoros brings us back to elemental power. Tracking shots on riverbank cranes follow plunging water as it thunders into chasms carved by Ister's floods, spray misting the air like ghostly applause. The frame widens to reveal the Fellowship's divided paths, each member's silhouette cast against roaring white foam. Here, visual effects and practical stunts merge seamlessly. Miniatures of the bridge at Amon Hen stand amid torrent-mimicking pumps, while actors traverse narrow planks above real rapids. The mood is one of climax and fracture, of possibilities snapping like a bowstring. Color grading shifts toward desaturated earth tones, the sky heavy as unspoken sorrow, even as water's roar drowns out fear and amplifies resolve. The climax atop the mountain pass finds its echo in every choice of lens and light. High-angle shots capture the Fellowship's tiny figures dwarfed by rocky spires, while quick cuts heighten the rush of battle. Steel flashing in sudden bursts, sparks scattering like fireflies against stone. The final confrontation under storm-lashed skies is shot with handheld cameras and rapid zooms to convey the whirlwind of conflict, each thrust and parry caught in kinetic churn. Lightning silhouettes the wizard in mid-spell, a living statue of defiance etched against black clouds. Then, as the storm breaks and silence returns, slow dissolves trace the battered Fellowship's scattered forms, the wind's whisper carrying both grief and hope across an open plain. Throughout every scene, the film's color palette and lighting design serve as an unspoken narrator. Warm, golden hues cradle moments of fellowship and laughter. Cool blues and grays herald danger and grief, and sudden shifts, streaks of crimson in a twilight sky, signal betrayal and sacrifice. Shadows play a starring role, curled across faces and hidden in corners, suggesting that even in the brightest moments, darkness waits. Camera movement parallels emotional arcs, gentle dolly-ins for whispered confidences, soaring crane shots for sweeping vistas of wonder, staccato cuts for heart-pounding flight. Each technique reinforces the story's themes: the tension between home and adventure, between unity and fracture, between the fleeting comfort of light and the inevitability of shadow. In the closing moments, as the survivors stand alone on the quiet riverbank, the lens pulls back to reveal two small figures dwarfed by ancient stones and silent waters. The horizon glows with dawn's first promise, a soft wash of peach and rose hat forecasts new beginnings. Here, the camera lingers, framing them within nature's vast cathedral of sky and stone, reminding us that their journey, though incomplete, has remade them forever. The final fade to black preserves that mood of bittersweet resolve, leaving us to carry the lingering echo of water's murmur and the memory of every leaf that whispered goodbye beneath silver light. Through every setting, from gentle gardens to cavernous ruins, from crystalline halls to roaring rapids, the film's production and cinematography craft an immersive world that breathes and shimmers with life. Locations become characters. The Shire's warmth nurtures innocence, Breeze Crossroads pulse with rumor and risk, Moria's halls echo history's weight, Rivendell's spires cradle ancient wisdom, Lothlorient's groves suspend time, and the river's tumult marks both fracture and hope. Each landscape shapes the mood and underscores the thematic currents of courage, unity, loss, and renewal. Visual elements, light and shadow, color and movement, speak as eloquently as dialogue, weaving a tapestry of sight and sound that carries us beyond mere observation into lived experience. In this cinematic journey, the world itself becomes a living poem, and we, as witnesses, step willingly into a tale where setting and story are fused in an unforgettable dance of magic and meaning.